Let's take a minute to recap all that you've learned in this course. NC 3-NBT2 explicitly describes strategies that third graders should be using to add and subtract within 1,000. Third graders should be able to decompose numbers using place value and then find sums and differences. Students should also be able to explain how addition can be used to solve subtraction problems and explain the relationship between addition and subtraction. Common Core 3-NBT1, requiring rounding, has also been embedded into NC 3-NBT2 as part of estimation strategies for addition and subtraction. Several changes have been made to 3NF standards. Previously, 3NF1 focused on area models and recording fractions in standard form, and 3NF2 focused on representing fractions on a number line. Previously, 3G2 focused on partitioning shapes into equal areas. While the general expectations in these standards has not changed, the content has been moved around and focused differently. 3G2 is now a part of the NF standards, no longer standing alone. NC 3NF1 focuses only on unit fractions, including unit fractions on a number line. Unit fractions are fractions with 1 as the numerator. More importantly, it is the base unit that makes up other fractions. NC 3NF2 now focuses on those other fractions. For example, the unit fraction 1/4 represents one part of a shape or number that has been partitioned into 4 equal parts. NC 3NF1 focuses on these unit fractions. If I'm referring to 2 or 3 of the 4 equal parts of the area model or number line, 2/4 or 3/4, then I'm working in NC 3NF2. Understanding the importance of unit fractions is critical. Just like kindergartners must understand that one object represents one thing being counted, understanding the most basic unit in counting as ones, third graders must develop an understanding of unit fractions as basic units used to count and name quantities between 0 and 1. Let's take a look at a couple examples of tasks to make sense of this. Also note that fractions are explicitly limited to fractions with halves, thirds, fourths, sixths, and eighths. Notice that NC 3NF1 problems only involve unit fractions, but include both area models and number lines. And NC 3NF2 problems involve problems with fractions composed of unit fractions, like 5/8 and 2/4. Again, both area models and number lines are now in the standard. Common Core 3NF3 has been split into two separate standards. NC 3NF3 focuses only on equivalent fractions. NC 3NF4 focuses on comparing fractions. Equivalency tasks should involve related fractions, halves, fourths, and eighths together, and thirds and sixths together. Focusing deeply and frequently on these related sets of fractions is critical for success with fractions later in 4th and 5th grades. Students should develop a fluency with these equivalencies both in area models and on number lines to support comparing and computation work in those later grade levels. The equivalencies need to be known just like multiplication and addition combinations. It's purposeful that the scope is limited so that students will know these equivalencies well. This does not mean that they should be memorized like on flashcards, but students should experience them so many times that they can quickly visually recall the equivalencies, picturing them in their minds or easily drawing them. Students also continue to recognize a whole as a fraction with the same numerator and denominator. Also, a part of NC 3NF3, students should be able to decompose a set of up to 4 wholes into halves, thirds, or fourths, sixths, or eighths, and name them as a fraction or whole number. For example, using pattern blocks and given that a yellow hexagon is one whole, students should be able to build 3 wholes from trapezoids and understand that it is both 3 wholes and 6 halves. Or a student might build 2 wholes from green triangles and recognize it as both 2 wholes and 12 sixths. NC 3NF4 requires the same content as the original 3NF3D. The content is just separated into a different standard for emphasis. Students are still expected to compare two fractions with the same numerator or to compare two fractions with the same denominator. Students use area models and number lines to identify equivalencies between halves, fourths, and eighths, and between thirds and sixths. Students identify fractions equivalent to 1, 2, 3, and 4 wholes. Students compare fractions with like numerators or fractions with like denominators. NC 3MD1 adds clarity to the expectation for elapsed time. Previously, many teachers were not sure regarding the amount of elapsed time that students should be able to calculate. While the actual North Carolina expectation remains the same, the standard makes it clear that students only find elapsed time within 1 hour. For example, this problem would not be appropriate for students. Tashana went to the store at 9:45. She returned 35 minutes later. What time did she return? But this problem would meet the expectations of the new standard. Tashana went to the store at 9:05. She returned home 35 minutes later. What time did she return? The first problem crosses the hour, and third grade students are not expected to cross the hour. NC 3MD2 requires students to measure length to the nearest half or quarter inch. However, 3MD4 has been removed and students are no longer required to record the data on a line plot. NC 3MD2 requires students to estimate and measure customary units such as cups, pints, quarts, gallons, ounces, and pounds. Previously, third grade students focused on metric units, grams, kilograms, and liters. Note that students do not have to solve problems involving conversion between units in third grade. NC 3MD3 only adds one new explicit expectation. Students are now expected to make and interpret data in a frequency table. NC 3MD5 is a combination of Common Core 3MD5 and 3MD6. The most notable change in these standards is the removal of problems involving additive area. Students will no longer be required to solve area problems for rectilinear figures. Keep in mind that students are still expected to be able to decompose a rectangle into two smaller rectangles to find the area. NC 3MD8 no longer includes solving problems about rectangles with a constant area and different perimeters or a constant perimeter and different areas. Students do continue to solve problems finding the perimeter of a polygon when all side lengths are known and finding a missing side when the perimeter and the other sides are known. There were only very small changes to the content of standards 30A1 through 30A5. Most notably, 30A4, determining the unknown in a multiplication or division equation, has been removed and embedded in NC 30A3, and 30A5, focusing on applying properties of operations to multiply and divide, has been removed and embedded into NC 30A1. Previously, 30A1 through 30A3 only mentioned multiplication within 100. Now, NC 30A1 and NC 30A3 are specific to say that these standards should only have factors up to 10. And NC 30A2 states that there should only be one-digit dividends and one-digit quotients. NC 30A1 and NC 30A2 explicitly state that students should illustrate and explain their strategies. NC 30A3 focuses on actually solving multiplication and division problems, and NC 30A3 is limited to one-step word problems. NC 30A8 places a new limitation on two-step word problems. Students continue to solve two-step word problems involving addition, subtraction, and multiplication. However, students do not solve two-step word problems involving division. Students continue to represent these problems with an equation and with a symbol for the unknown. Notice also that estimation is no longer included in this standard. All problems involving estimation are now part of NC3 and BT2. Common Core 30A9 focused on arithmetic patterns in general, including both addition and multiplication. NC 30A9 focuses on multiplication patterns only and emphasizes the use of a 100 chart and multiplication table to explore patterns. Common Core 3G1 focused on understanding that shapes in one category could share attributes with other shapes in another category, and to understand that those attributes can define a larger category. For example, squares have 4 sides and parallelograms have 4 sides. Having 4 sides is an attribute of a larger category called quadrilaterals. The focus of NC 3G1 is slightly different. NC 3G1 requires third graders to draw examples and non-examples of different types of quadrilaterals. For example, when asked to draw a square, students should know to draw a shape with 4 equal sides and 4 square corners. Given a set of shapes, students should be able to sort into trapezoids and not trapezoids, explaining that the trapezoids are the shapes that have exactly one pair of opposite sides that would never meet or cross, and another pair of opposite sides that would meet or cross if extended. Third grade students are also supposed to manipulate triangles and quadrilaterals to compose a new shape or to decompose into 2 new shapes. Students might be given 2 triangles and asked to use the triangles to make a rectangle, or they might be asked to decompose a rectangle into 2 triangles. Next, you will take a 10-question quiz on the changes in the North Carolina standards. Be sure that you have participated in all discussions and make at least an 80% on the quiz to receive credit for this course. You are able to retake the quiz one time as needed. Thank you for participating in this course.